Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about the Challenger flight, the tragedy that took place, kind of the history behind it, and how it all worked out. I did a little bit of background research besides just reading the Wikipedia article. I also watched a couple documentaries and some videos on YouTube just to kind of get a basic understanding of the spacecraft they were dealing with and how it all worked out. So the spacecraft that they were using, it was a retrieval spacecraft, so they would go up in space, the three thrusters would break off, and it would just be left with like an airplane shape spaceship, and that would just end up landing like a normal airplane, and then they could reuse it again. So it was a really popular idea at the time. It still is, but it was just the idea that they could keep reusing and save a lot of money, and they got to where they were potentially launching 3 ships. They would launch a ship every 3 days, and that was just a really big deal, and it leading to potential commercial flight. But the Challenger specifically was a really controversial, important flight because it had civilians on board. That was just unheard of. It was a really big deal. But going right into it, so the flight, what happened is it took off like usual. About 73 seconds into the flight, the O-rings, which connect the thrusters, they blew. They're holding all the gas. They blew out and exploded the flight. And NASA knew why it exploded. So kind of leading up to the flight, there's going to be a record low that morning of 18 degrees, and optimal flight conditions were 53 degrees. And that was just really scary for all the engineers because they knew that stuff was going to go down. Roger specifically was the engineer for the O-rings, and NASA knew and he knew that the O-rings almost every time would fail. The first O-ring, the gas would pass through, but the second would hold it. So this really scared Roger because he's never flown in these conditions. He knew that in these conditions the O-rings were going to fail, and yeah, it was a big deal. So they had a lot of press conferences between managers, engineers, all that, all on air, just to kind of discuss, see if they should still go on with this flight. And the engineers all unanimously agreed that the flight should not be going on, and that it was just not a smart idea. Roger specifically stood up and said, I know this is gonna fail. It's not gonna work. We need to reschedule. We need to fix this, and just have a nicer day to do this. But the managers went to the press and said, it's gonna work perfectly fine. There's no big deal. Nothing to worry about. I think this was a really big issue because the engineers and the managers, they should have talked together. They should have realized that the engineers know more than the managers do about this subject, and they know that it's going to fail. And instead of playing the manager part and just making it look good for their business and their corporation, they should have looked at the engineer's side as well. So NASA definitely could have done that differently. They could have fixed the O-rings, put a third one in, which they ended up doing after. But kind of in the future, I think it's important for corporations to see not just what's good for them, but what's also good for the public. And that might take a little work between communication with the engineers, managers, and just the common workers. People who know more about the subject should have more of a say in what's going to go down and how we can protect kind of the public. But yeah, this was definitely a big deal, but Roger he stepped up and he did what was right. It's a big deal. He had a family to take care of. That was his source of income, and he put his whole job on the line just to say that, it's not going to work. We need to reschedule, But that's kind of the tragedy, how it went down. A lot of respect for Roger for going through with that. But NASA definitely could have changed how they went about this. Yeah, thank you.